This review will take a quick look at the abduction of Betty and Barney Hill, and here a relative discusses it. It's a rather interesting review, and this is really kind of the, when they were abducted, they were kind of really the pioneers of that, the abduction procedures that people have been stating that they've been abducted for years now, and this is kind of the genesis of it. And let me get this on the screen here real quick. One moment, please.
Betty had a vacation from her job as a social worker for the state of New Hampshire. Barney worked for the post office. Neither believed in UFO reality at that time. They had never read a book on the topic. They took a brief vacation to Niagara Falls, onto Toronto, onto Montreal, and they were driving home through the White Mountains of New Hampshire on September 19, 1961, when they had a close encounter with a UFO. It came so close that it was within 100 feet, estimated by them, of their location. Barney got out of the car with his binoculars. He looked up at it, and according to the Air Force report and the report that they made to the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, very shortly thereafter, they observed a craft that was approximately 100 feet above them. It was extremely large. They told the Air Force that it was as large as a dinner plate at arm's length. Keep in mind that an aspirin will cover the full moon at arm's length. This was very close to them. It was observed by at least a dozen additional people. It was on radar on the Air Force's 2 radar stations, and a follow-up study by the Air Force stated that this was a bona fide sighting, not just a blip on the radar screen.
So he got out, Barney got out of the car and he got his binoculars out. What did he see through? This really surprised me, what he saw at the windows of the craft with his binoculars.
The early reports state that Barney saw figures standing behind the windows on this craft. They were dressed in black, shiny uniforms, and he described them as being, quote, somehow not human, close quote.
So he very quickly ran towards the car because a red beam of light came out of this spaceship, and he ran towards the car, said to Betty, we need to get out of here, we need to get out of here. And there was a noise, a sound, and they felt this sort of feeling come over them, and then they woke up and realized they'd lost 2 hours of time.
Yes, Barney became terrified when he began to think that there was a plan for him, and he said, quote, that he was going to be captured like a bug in a net. He ran from the field he was standing in back to the vehicle, jumped into the car, and started to race down the highway to try to escape from this craft that had, at that point, moved over the top of the vehicle. He told Betty to roll down the window. She did. She looked up. She expected to see lights. There were no lights present. All she saw was blackness, even though it was a bright light night. The moon was about 3/4 full. She rolled the window back up again, and at that point the car started to vibrate. She and Barney heard a series of buzzing sounds striking the trunk of the car, and suddenly they found themselves in a new location. And they were 35 miles down the road with very little memory for what had happened in the interim. They did recall that they had encountered a roadblock somewhere along the way. They had also observed a fiery orb. They did not know what that was. It was a vague memory. Later they realized that it was moving, but they were not moving. They drove on to their home in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and found evidence that something unusual had occurred to them. Betty's dress was torn in several locations.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine. I was coming on to that because the zipper on her dress was broken. His shoes were in such a mess that he had to throw them away. And your concrete evidence, which we said in the introduction, is quite interesting. The pink powder, explain that.
Betty's dress was torn in several locations. There was a 2-inch tear in the zipper fabric the stitching at the top of her dress, a 1-inch tear in the thick zipper fabric. The dress was torn from waist to hemline, and the hem was torn down on one side. It indicated that something had happened that Betty could not remember. It had been in fine condition when she put it on that day. She folded the dress up when she arrived home and put it in her closet, knowing that she would have to repair it. The next time she took the dress out, it was covered with a pink powdery substance, not the entire dress. Some of it remained blue, but the pink powder discolored the fiber in the dress and degraded the fiber.
Did you have it analyzed? What was it?
It is one of the pieces of concrete evidence. It has been analyzed in at least 5 scientific laboratories to date, and the finding is anomalous. They have found proteins on the dress, they have found oils on the dress, they know that they did not belong to Betty. The dress is most deeply saturated with the pink substance in the areas where Betty stated that these non-human entities actually touched the dress.
Is it of this planet?
They were not able to determine whether or not this was of this planet. Certainly some of the material on that dress was. There was dirt, there was bacteria, there were those sorts of things that would be on any article of human clothing, particularly after it had been sitting in a closet for a long period of time.
It really does remain a complete mystery, doesn't it? And it's absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much for joining us today.
As you can see, that's an interesting review of the Betty and Barney Hill case, and outside of maybe the Travis Walton UFO abduction, it's the most prominently well-known. And there's a lot of stuff on the internet about that, and several books have been written. And let me get a final screen on here, and that'll do it.